First of all, I want to thank you all for listening to my show. For all my listeners who are celebrating Yom Kippur, I want to wish you a Gamar Hatima Tova. May you all be enshrined in the Book of Life, Baruch Hashem. And this is September 26, 2020. I hope everybody's having a great weekend or having a great weekend. As we know, President Trump has just announced his nomination, of Barrett being the nomination. I wish her all well, and I hope a speedy confirmation to be the next Justice of the Supreme Court. Anyway, what I want to get into, and this is, bear with me on this particular show, it's going to have a lot of detailed information. Specifically from the Senate report, it's going to go into what I had spoken about in my last show. Feel free to check that out. When regarding to the Biden corruption enterprise, or should I say, the Biden racketeering family corruption enterprise. But as I go through these details, I apologize if this gets extended, but I need to get through a lot of information that I feel that I found that within the report, I think that's highly critical, that may be eye-openers to the actual criminality of this enterprise, not just by Hunter, involved with this, and of course Joe Biden and his brother James, but it's clearly showing that Jill was highly involved as well. But getting back, when I think of the Democrats, and we've witnessed it, there's sort of like a pattern, that I have spoken about in the last show about with patterns of his corruption. Well, they also have another unique pattern that happens, and you can see this within the Democrats and Joe Biden. I mean, you could go for the last 4 to 5 years, or actually since Trump announced that he was going to become president, and then or run for becoming president in 2016 or 2015, and 2016 being elected, and we see the vast hypocrisy. And not only just the hypocrisy, we find how the Democrats and Biden have often accused President Trump and plus Democrats for, in fact, what they are themselves guilty of. Besides exaggerating stuff and making up stuff, they themselves are the ones guilty of. I mean, you can literally think of every single thing that the Bidens and Democrats have accused Donald Trump. They literally have they themselves done. I mean, literally. Here they accuse Putin of being that Trump was under the thumb of Putin, having conspired with Putin. But now we know full well from the recent Russian dossier that was paid for by the Clinton and the DNC, the Democrats, that the Russian dossier was known by the Biden FBI to have been a Russian spy as the source for this Russian spy dossier, aka also known as the Steele dossier, which was the sole central document that was utilized in the FISA court to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump and his campaign. Again, this was bought and paid for by the Clintons and the Democrats and used in an attempt to commit a coup. So when you think about what the Democrats often have accused Trump, they themselves are guilty of. So when they question about the role of democracy and that Trump could possibly destroy democracy, we know full well that it's the other way around. That the Democrats have threatened our constitutional republic by doing things that would destroy our institutions. I mean, they come out blatantly threatening to destroy our institutions or dissolving them in one form, or making up new rules to dissolve our Constitution. But I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to get into the specific facts of certain things, and one of which is, of course, I want to know about Joe Biden, because I believe he is actually a threat to our democratic constitutional republic. In fact, he himself was highly involved with committing a coup, along with the Obamas and et al., meaning referring in legal jargon as everybody involved with within the Trump, within the Obama Biden administration officials. Certainly, there I can name tons of people within, but I wouldn't even finish the show, and even within 2 hours if I named everybody involved. As you can see, you can probably Google it and get real information inside, but beyond the fake news of Washington Post, MSNBC, New York Times, CNN, of course, it's pure Pravda. But we know for the fact that there was actually a coup attempt upon an elected president. So who actually did try to commit the coup against the president? We know who did. I mean, even Joe himself was highly involved, because Joe was in a meeting that orchestrated the takedown of General Flynn. And we're now finding out how that was, General Flynn, by the way, was the incoming NSA advisor. Who more important to be associated next to a president would be the national security advisor, to articulate and get all this vast intel of our enemies and situations geopolitically around the world, and assess where our threats are, who our enemies are, who our allies are, and all this stuff. We even know for a fact that Obama and Biden purposely obstructed giving in normal transitions of our administrations, which always has been character of our governments, which has always been successful, giving this information over. But instead, they purposely obstructed that information getting, and purposely orchestrated taking down the NSA advisor, who was incoming NSA advisor for Trump, thereby sabotaging, not just sabotaging, but orchestrating a attempted coup. So I asked, why then Joe Biden, why did he unmask the name of General Flynn and others 3 weeks before Trump was to be inaugurated? I mean, I wouldn't really hold my breath, and I doubt that Chris Wallace will even have the journalistic courage to even ask Biden's involvement in this attempted coup. But the facts speak for themselves. So if Chris Wallace actually had any balls, seriously, he would ask these questions, because this is the questions that Americans should know. What was his involvement during January of General Flynn's attempted removal and the orchestrating of getting him removed? And what was the other features that he was highly why did he unmask all these names? And what was his involvement and how he participated in the attempted coup of the incoming President Trump's administration? These are questions, and certainly there's plenty more, that Chris Wallace should have some balls coming this debate on Tuesday to ask these questions. But I very doubt he will. When they accused Trump in 2016, they actually couldn't accept, and I'm talking about talking about Biden, they couldn't accept that Trump would become the president. I'm talking Biden, I'm talking Obama, I'm talking about the Democrats, and still to this day, they couldn't even accept these results. This is nothing new for Democrats, because they actually did this several times before. They actually did this twice with Bush, if you remember, in 2000, and they did this in 2004. They tried to make it like, well, George W. Bush Jr. wasn't really elected in 2000. That it was fake, and it was not a real election, and they questioned because of the circumstance of counting the ballots, right? They also did the same thing in 2004 with Kerry. They questioned that, that Trump, maybe Bush didn't really win Ohio. So, I mean, this is nothing new about the Democrats. I've never heard in my life, and believe me, I was a Democrat until 2009, and I've never heard Republicans questioning how Democrats suddenly became president, or even on close elections. I mean, nobody questioned when Clinton got elected twice, or Obama got elected twice, or Carter got elected. Nobody questioned that. But we hear it the other way around. And it's, and even recent time, we just heard, if you remember the Georgia governor election, they still haven't accepted that election. That was in 2018. So this is a sort of a pattern with the Democrats. And this is why there's a real problem. I think people in America are actually waking up. Biden actually even, has accused Trump of lying. But in fact, we see time after time, it's not Trump who's lying. It's actually Biden is lying. He literally makes up stories and even fabricates of events and stories. He lies all throughout his entire career. I mean, Biden is so bad in lying. He even plagiarizes speeches, and we even heard in the DNC when he gave an acceptance speech, he literally copied and pasted I believe a Canadian politician. I mean, you couldn't get any worse. Okay, at least Trump, his speeches are articulated from a original source, not from anybody else, but from himself. So, and they always accuse Trump of lying, but all I see is the Democrats constantly lie. Didn't they lie for 3 years about Russia? And they even lied about Ukraine. They're always lying about stuff. And this is nothing new. But the thing is, what they've lied about Trump is really they themselves are guilty of. Especially the Bidens. And I'm going to get into the Bidens right now, because this is really, it's really between those two right now. It's President Trump versus Joe Biden. And the relationship, what really went on in Biden's career. You see, Biden actually lied when he stated that he knew nothing of his son's business affairs, including Ukraine and Russia. But here's a little bit of facts, and this came out, by the way, out of the recent Senate report, and you please do, you can Google it and download it as a PDF. I did it myself, and you can see exactly the information that's gotten very articulated and very formal about what they found, and it's based upon fact, and I'll explain later. It's not just made up anything. This is basically from actual true sources, but here it is. In April 16, in 2014, after being designated by Obama to deal with Ukrainian affairs, Biden met with his son's business partner. Remember, Biden first of all said he didn't know anything about his son's affairs in business. Mind you this. But in 2016, when he was designated by Obama to deal with Ukrainian affairs, he met with his son's business partner, Devin Archer, immediately in 2016. Conveniently, right? Then, on April 22nd, Devin Archer joins a corrupt company called Burisma. In fact, he's on their board in May. Shortly after that, in May, Hunter also joins Devin on Burisma's board. There was substantial monies given to Hunter, and that was actually by Burisma and other sources within the Ukraine, that was even questioned by Obama's State Department as a possible conflict of interest and very problematic. Biden was totally aware of this but didn't care. In fact, it was business as usual for his family. So, when I read this is actually stated from the report, and I'm going to read it verbatim. I might be reiterating some stuff, so I apologize for that, but I do think it's necessary to explain this. It says on April 16th, I said, 2014, Vice President Biden met with his son's business partner, Devon Archer, at the White House. 5 days later, Vice President Biden visited the Ukraine. And then soon after, he described it in the press as a public face of the administration's handling of Ukraine. Well, that day after his visit, on April 22nd, Archer joined the board of Burisma. So I apologize when I said in May, it was actually April 22nd. 6 days later, on April 28th, British officials seized $23 million from a London account of Burisma's owner, which is, I apologize if I pronounce his name, but Slavsky. 14 days later, now this happened in May 12th, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma, and over the course of the next several years, Hunter Biden and Devon Archer were actually paid millions of dollars from this corrupt Ukrainian oligarch for their participation on the board. You got to realize, mind you, this was during a really heavy year, because during that year, in 2014, protests in Kiev came to be known as the Revolution of Dignity, a revolution against corruption in Ukraine. Following that revolution, the Ukrainian public officials were desperate for U.S.'s support. Slavsky would have made sure relevant Ukrainian officials were quite aware of Hunter's appointment to Burisma as leverage. Biden's position on the board created immediate potential conflict of interest, I'm reading from the report now, that would prove to be very problematic for both U.S. and Ukrainian officials and would affect the implementation of Ukraine policy. So, what did the Senate do recently? This happened in August of 2019. Mind you, this is August 2019 when the Democrats are ramping up trying to start a impeachment hearing against Trump over his relationship of what they describe with Ukraine. But really, it was Biden's problem, and that's what they were trying to stop. They were so scared of the criminal activity by the Biden family and others, which I'll raise, that were highly involved. So what did they do? They struck first and created this whole diversion of this whole impeachment bullshit over Trump being involved in trying to obstruct and play quid pro quo with Ukraine, when it was quite the opposite. And that's why I'm bringing up this date. Excuse me. So, in the chairman's investigation of the potential conflicts of interest began in August 2019. The letter of Chairman Grassley's letter to the Department of Treasury regarding potential conflicts of interest with respect to the Obama administration's policy relating to what's called the Hennings transaction. See, these things are starting to unfold. They started opening up areas of conflict, not just in Ukraine, but now in China, which I have discussed in a prior, I know I'm jumping off, but it leads into, you'll see this more or less spread of family ties in various foreign areas. And I discussed BHR in my last show, but this is important because you have Ukraine now, Hunter Biden's involved with Ukraine, and then you're going to figure out, well, what's this crap with him involved with China? You see, during the Obama administration, on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, which is called CFIUS, they approved a transaction that gave control over Hennings, an American maker of anti-vibrational technologies with the military applications, to a Chinese government-owned aviation company, which is a China-based investment company with ties, by the way, to the Chinese government. One of those companies involved with Hennings' transaction was a multi-billion-dollar private investment company called Bohai Harvest, which is RST, which is what I call BHR. BHR was formed in 2013 in November by the merger merger between the government, Chinese government linked from Bohai Capital, and a company named Roosevelt Seneca Partners. Seneca Partners and BHR became one and the same because Seneca was actually formed by Hunter Biden, who was then president. So John Kerry and there's others were associated with Seneca. So Chris Heinz, who is the stepson, you probably know the Heinz family, right? The stepson of John Kerry. So now you have the John Kerry, you have Biden, and now you're starting to see why the State Department kept their mouths shut. And you thought that the Clinton Foundation quid pro quo was bad? I'm telling you, that was nothing. The Biden criminal activity was unreal. This is why, by the way, you can see why Kerry was so worried about when Trump became president and why he's like, he sweats and dribbles because he was highly involved. The others, when they were referring to others, by the way, that was also involved, by the way, you might blink and could possibly be, somebody like maybe Pelosi's son or others, just to name a few. I do know for a fact that Pelosi's son was highly involved with Burisma, and I believe Romney was also involved with Burisma, or his family was indirectly. So there's a lot of, and you can see why they're all afraid of Donald Trump. When Donald Trump became president, if he didn't become president, we would never known about Burisma or any of the stuff that, or any of the corruption went on. We would have never heard about the Clinton Foundation, how corrupt that was. You would never know about Obama and his corrupt enterprise, because he was certainly involved. He didn't become over after 8 years in being in office suddenly worth tens of millions of dollars. Okay, how the hell did he make that kind of money? And don't tell me book deals only. And this is actually literally when he stepped out of office. Okay, this is how corrupt they are. Now there's several very intricate key points which I would like to read off, and they're very important. And this is what they found in his report. I believe it's on page 4 of the report. And I'm going to read each one of them because I think they're highly important. One of the importances of this is the first key point is in early 2015. The former acting deputy of chief of mission at the U.S. U.S. Embassy in Kiev in Ukraine you probably have heard his name, George Kent. Kent was, of course, called during those impeachment hearings. He raised concerns to officials in the vice president's Joe Biden's office about the perception of a possible conflict in interest with respect to Biden's son's activities on the Burisma board. Just a conflict of interest? Is that all it was? Okay. So Kent's concern went unaddressed, and in September of 2016, he emphasized in an email to his colleagues, quote unquote, this is Kent's words, not mine, in the report. Furthermore, the presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine. Wow, really, right? In October 2015, senior State Department officials, Amos Hochstein, raised concerns with Vice President Biden, as well as with Hunter Biden, that Biden's position on Burisma enabled Russian disinformation efforts and risked undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine. You think they cared? There's money made, man. Come on, man. Now, although Kent believed that Biden's role on the Burisma was awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corrupt agenda in Ukraine, the committee's are only aware of two individuals: Kent, a former U.S. envoy and coordinator for international affairs, Amos Holstein, who also raised concern to the Vice President Joe Biden and his staff, which was Kent. So, in other words, not only Kent and Holstein were aware and worried about, but their staff was certainly aware of what the hell is going on here. Okay, I mean, it's stink of high heaven of corruption. The awkwardness for the Obama administration officials continued well past his presidency. In fact, former Secretary of State John Kerry had knowledge of Hunter Biden's role on the Burisma board. But when asked about it in a town hall, and I quote, he in a town hall event that happened in New Hampshire on December 8, 2019. John Kerry lied when he said, "I had no knowledge about any of that, no, none," even though there is actually evidence that showed that John Kerry knew damn well what was going on. Why? Oh, not because only Hunter, but because of his stepson involved. I mean, he couldn't be blatantly, his own officials underneath him knew about. How did the whole State Department know, but John Kerry didn't know? Please, come on, man. As Joe Biden would say, right? Anyway, another key point was former Assistant State of Secretary of State for the European and Asian Affairs. You may have heard him testify. Victoria Nolan, who testified that confronting oligarchs would send an anti-corruption message in Ukraine. Kent told the committee that Slovinsky was an odious oligarch. However, in December 2015, instead of following use objectives of confronting oligarchs, Vice President Biden's staff advised him to avoid commenting on Slovinsky and recommended, and I quote, "I'm not going to go into naming names or accusing officials." So in other words, Joe Biden knew damn well what was going on and the corruption that and his son and all that was going on with the Burisma, and he specifically told him, don't start naming names and shut the hell up, basically. You gotta realize Hunter at the time was serving on the Burisma board, supposedly as a consulting on corporate governance and transparency, when Slovinsky was paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving under Ukraine's prosecutor general, Vitalo Yarema, to shut the case against Slovinsky. Now, Kent testified that this bribe occurred in 2014, 7 months after Hunter had joined Burisma's board. After learning about it, he and the resident legal advisor reported this allegation to the FBI. Whatever happened to that, we all know. Nothing was done. Why? Who's running the FBI? Oh yeah, Comey. Who's underneath Comey at the time? You're talking about, this was 2014. It would be either Lynch or, his other AG. I mean, come on, man. Hunter was considered a U.S. Secret Service protectee from January 29th to 2000 to July 8th, 2014. You got to realize why he's considered protectee is because of his father. So a day before his last trip as a protectee, as it's called, Time published an article describing Burisma's ramp up lobbying efforts to the U.S. officials and Hunter's involvement in Burisma's board. Before ending his protective detail, Hunter Biden received Secret Service protection on the trips to multiple foreign locations, to Moscow, Beijing, Doha, Paris, Seoul, Manila, Tokyo, Mexico City, Milan, Florence, Shanghai, Geneva, and so on and so on. I'm not going to go through them all. So in other words, Hunter Biden was now considered under a U.S. Secret Service protectee working with as an agent of the United States while working in a way indirectly for a corrupt company, or receiving funds from a company like Burisma and others, like I mentioned, and you'll find out from BHR and through the Chinese, of corruption. Yet he's flying around as a protectee under the aspects of the American system. I mean, it's actually, he committed a felony, which, is blatantly clear. It would be like any government official running around, flying around, and while he's doing this, he's doing business on the side. You're not allowed to do that. I mean, it's conflict of interest. It's clear that he collected, it was corrupt, but it's felonious. Anyway, Andrei Telezinko, who the Democrats' personification of Russian disinformation, met with Obama administration officials, including Elizabeth Zentos, a member of Obama's National Security Council, at least 10 times. A Democrat lobbying firm called Blue Star Strategies contacted Telezinko from 2016 to 2017 and continued to request his assistance as recent as the summer of 2019. Mind you, so the Democrats were highly involved with a corrupt official, Telezinko, involved with Russian disinformation within Ukraine. Get it? A recent news article detailed other extensive contacts between, again, Telezinko and Obama officials. This also brings in, you can see how these are sort of interlinked. I apologize if this is getting blurry, but it's very detailed, and there is a connection to all of them. In addition to over $4 million being paid by Burisma for both Hunter Biden and Archer's board membership activities, his family and Archer received millions of dollars from foreign nationals with very questionable backgrounds. In other words, besides Burisma, a lot of what you call criminal, mafioso kind of people in the Ukraine were sliding money left and right to both Hunter and his business partner. In fact, one of them is Archer received, we know for, these are all facts, $142,300 from Rigas Raksiv of Kazakhstan, which was purported for a car the same day that Vice President Joe Biden appeared with Ukrainian Prime Minister Alexei Yatsenyuk and addressed Ukrainian legislators in Kiev regarding Russia's actions in Crimea. Now you can see what's going on here. You remember Russia invaded and took over Crimea, and what did Biden and Obama really do? Nothing, right? Yet they're paying left and right, monies left and right, because their country was basically dysfunctional because it was corrupt. This is why the Ukrainians were getting attacked. Basically, you had Ukrainian officials corrupting Hunter, and also the Russians were involved, which you're going to find how this is like massive. It was between the Putins and the Russians and the Ukrainians. I mean, here's an example. This is all fact by they have these transactions because of the Treasury Department. Hunter, listen to this, received $3.5 million in a wire transfer from Elena Baturina, who is the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Now, why that she's important is because her husband was extremely close to Putin. Her husband was also a little bit of known oligarch Russian little mobster, okay? So, who also, there's questionable whether they were involved with human trafficking of Russian and Eastern European slave trade, which I'll get into. That connection, because we know Hunter had his little things there. Anyway, Hunter had opened a bank account with another. This is another thing. This is regarding China. Now this is like gonna blow you away. This is where this is just crazy. Every time I think about it, Hunter Biden opened a bank account with a Chinese bank with a guy named Dongwen Dong. Pronounce it GONGWENDONG, to fund $100,000 globing spree with his James Biden and Sarah Biden. What that meant was basically, and this is why, see, Hunter Biden had businesses with one individual named Yi Jiangmin and Dong, and other Chinese nationals who are extremely linked or basically run by the communist government and their military officials. Those associations result in millions of dollars being transferred indirectly through to Hunter. And meantime, while he's getting all this money, and you got to remember, Hunter flew on that little trip, remember, with Biden and handed $1.5 billion. Well, Hunter Biden was also on BHR, which is linked to Dong's corporations, which are connected to each other, where they are associated with Chinese military industries. So not only did he receive monies indirectly corrupting Biden's son, but Joe Biden's wife is corrupted by the Chinese military because they gave her basically a credit card which they just ran on a spending freeze. You know, they went on a spending fleet. You know, they went out and spend whatever they want. This is crazy. I mean, so you have the vice president's wife getting an expense account paid by the enemy of the United States, the Chinese military government. I mean, not the Chinese party, but communist Chinese party, but their military was directly involved with this disbursement of funds and allocating a credit, so they can go around and spend all they want. Who knows what the hell she spent? So you can see how the pattern of corruption. I mean, you have Ukraine. You even have Russia, the payoffs from Moscow. You have Ukraine. I mean, it's crazy. Now, the reason I brought up Hunter Biden with involvement with the payoffs from the mayor, the wife of the mayor of Moscow, and his criminal criminal connection, is because it's now known that Hunter, and this is a fact, paid non-resident women who are nationals of Russia and or other Eastern European countries who appeared to be linked, as I quote, an Eastern European prostitution and human trafficking ring. This is really crazy. I mean, you have to think about it. This is how bad the links are between them. And it's unheard of. I really highly suggest that you look at this report. This, by the way, is only a preliminary report. They still have an interim report. And I believe that this was already turned over to the FBI for a criminal referral for Hunter himself, who clearly violated U.S. law. But I also believe that Joe Biden himself and his wife broke the law. See, according to, like I said, I may be reiterating, according to the Senate probe, the relationship between Biden and his family and Ukrainian business will result in millions of dollars in the flow. Some of these transactions were reported linked to Eastern European or human trafficking rings. So think about it. not only were Biden's family and business, and I remember I told you they're very scrupulous mafioso people, but they were also involved with perhaps human trafficking ring, and there were payoffs through that. You have to realize how disgusting this is. And by the way, just to throw a cap for Trump, Trump actually organized a task force that's going internationally and also locally. And you probably may have heard through the news, hopefully, that they've actually went after human trafficking here within the United States. But Trump is actually active, highly active. This is the first president in I don't know, decades that has set up task force to go not just both here locally in the United States, domestically in the United States, but also internationally to go after human trafficking rings. So kudos to President Trump on that. Now, going back to what I was talking about, there's also some notes and cases where we find out with Hunter Biden's law firm, which was, we're going to get into the transaction with another area of China. See, there's so many. I can go do this for days and I wouldn't be finished with. That's why I said, please bear with me. This is going to be a little bit longer than I normally have. And I know some of my shows go half an hour to 45 minutes to an hour plus, but there's so much. It's unreal. I mean, I can go, it's just, where do you begin? I mean, like I said, the Biden family makes the Clintons look like, I mean, Clintons were easy to look at. This is like everywhere. Here's there's cases here in 20. This is after, by the way. This is what's unreal. This is how sometimes I think they're really stupid. Biden's law firm, which is called Owasco, OWASCO, was accepting nearly $6 million in consulting fees, by the way, and legal representation for a oligarch. Oh, did I mention his name? Yi Jinping. Okay. According to the report, it is suggested that it's stated to the fact that on August 8th, 2017, CEFC Infrastructure Investment wired, which is, by the way, the Chinese communist firm, wired $5 million to a bank account for Hudson West. Think about it. You got to remember what Hudson West, you're going to find out the connection. These funds may have originated from a loan issued from an account of a company called Northern International Capital Holdings, a Hong Kong-based investment company identified as a subsidiary shareholder in CEFC, which is, again, international limited company along with Yi. It is unclear whether Biden was actually half owner of Hudson West at that time, but it is clear he is a partner of Hudson West, which they know, because starting on August 8th, the same day that the $5 million were received and continued through September 25th, 2018, Hudson West 3 sent frequent payments to Owasco, Hunter Biden's firm. These payments were distributed as consulting fees, reaching a total in one period of a year. By the way, this happened in 2018, $4,790,375.25. The reason why I know it's so detailed is because this is actually known by the Treasury Department. Whenever massive transactions are transferred, the Treasury Department has access because of the IRS. They, right away spot, hey, why is this transfer happening? So these are facts. Now, here comes Sarah Biden again. Between August 14th and 2017, on August 3rd, Owasco sent 20 wires totaling $1,398,999 to Lion Hall Group, a consulting firm that lists, by the way, James Biden and Joe Biden's wife, Sarah, on that bank account. This transaction was identified as a potential criminal financial activity, the report states. And I'm going to read what it says on the report. This is by the Treasury Department, by the way, and this is quoted out of this report. These transfers began less than 1 week after CEFC Infrastructure Investment wired $5 million to Hudson West, and Hudson West then sent its first payment of $400,000 to Owasco. Most of the payments from Owasco to the Lion Hall Group had vague notes in the memo lines, 15 which implicated that they were for further to be credited to James Biden. However, there was another one of the payments that read HW3, which indicates some of the monies would be transferred, HW3 meaning Hudson West 3. When the bank the bank contacted Sarah Biden regarding the overall wire activity, she stated that the Lion Hall Group and Owasco provide international and business consulting, and that the Lion Hall Group was assisting Owasco with an international client through a contract that has since been terminated. Sarah Biden told the bank that she would not provide any further documentation because she had none, and she also refused to provide any additional information to clarify such activity ever occurred. It's pretty clear that how she's now involved, yet she was the vice president wife. Consequently, the bank submitted the count. The committees created the following chart with respect to this transaction. Hudson West also sent funds directly to Lions Hall Group. According to the records on file with the committees, James Biden is the principal contact for Lion Hall. So in other words, they moved monies around paid from China, Communist China's military, that went through one person to another to even Owasco, right, which is Hunter's company, and they also then forward more money back to Lion Hall, which is run by Joe Biden's brother James, but also Sarah Biden was sort of involved too. I mean, this is unheard of. And guess how much money that was in that memo that was sent outgoing? It was totaling $76,000 within that one memo, and it was considered an office expense and reimbursement. So there's not just millions; they're also setting up little business accounts. It says these, I quote from a report, these transactions illustrate a direct financial link between Hudson West, which was connected to CEFC, the Communist Chinese government and their military, and Gong Wang Dong and James Biden. These connections and the investors wrote, including Ying Jingming, the founder of CFC China Energy Company, or CFC, and its associate Dong, who reported carried out transactions for Jimeng companies. The report noted who formerly held positions, again, for the People's Liberation Army, the military, who also possessed financial connection to, Joe Biden's brother, James Biden. For years, according to the Senate report, Hunter Biden leveraged his vast network of connections to ultimately create the investment of BHR, which I've talked to you about, with RST, which is the Shanghai Investment Activity, which was prioritized investing with Chinese capital on overseas projects. The financial group received its approval for a Chinese business license after a series of meetings arranged by Hunter Biden on a government in 2013 government trip to China with his vice president father, both flying aboard Air Force Two. This is from the Wall Street Journal, the firm, according to Wall Street Journal, is controlled and funded primarily by the large Chinese government's own shareholders. Basically, the Chinese government owns that company, which also is involved with its military, and they had channeled $2.5 billion into an auto, energy, mining, technology deals on behalf of adventures. BHR's connections to the Chinese government is intertwined in its existence with decision-making of the Communist Party's leaders. Unreal. This is crazy. I mean, I'm just baffled. I'm surprised that I'm surprised that the federal marshals aren't sit there, walk up to both Hunter, James, Sarah, and Joe Biden and just put the handcuffs on and haul them in. You know, where the hell is Barr and Durham or whoever U.S. attorney? The DOJ needs to actively do something. This is absurd. This is really blatant. I mean, it's blatantly. This is so disgusting. This is. I'm reading this off to you, and it's already blowing me away, because it's one thing they're screwing American workers, which they have a history of, and they still do. Joe Biden and his family, of diverting funds and making deals and taking jobs and bringing over to the out of the United States into China and elsewhere. But they're a totally national security risk. They're literally acting as paid off bribe by the Chinese government. I mean, you remember they always said Trump was under the thumb of Putin. Well, we know that that's total bull crap. But we know some also thing that we noticed too, that if Chris Wallace had any balls, he would ask him his relationship with China and all these criminal activities and transactions between his wife and his son and his brother with all these corporations like BHR. I mean, this is unheard of. I mean, he's basically named. Here's a report that James Biden is named in the report along with his wife Sarah Biden and Hunter as an authorized use for a line of credit opened by Gong Wen. The family went on more than $100,000 shopping spree using Chinese credit, purchasing extravagant items and tickets and high-tech products from Apple and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is, you probably heard of there with in Israel, for example, and Bibi Netanyahu and his wife Sarah. I don't like bringing that stuff up, but there was a corruption scandal that he's being investigated, and whatever happens, I don't know. But there is a fact that his wife had received gifts, and then she ended up admitted to receiving, or she gave her, when she pled guilty, and it was involved with a German company with the submarines. I'm not going to get into that thing, and it was disgusting, right? And they went after her. I mean, Israel can do it. Why can't our government go after this kind of stuff with our government officials, even a vice president like Biden and his family? That's so blatant. I mean, Hillary Clinton was out to make money for herself. I don't know, and she actually was part of the Ukraine deal, which actually sold out our uranium to Joe Biden. Totally a national security risk. But Russia is as far as a threat to the United States, is not really much of a threat. Their economy is, they're very much teeny, right? Compared to China. China has a serious army. They have a serious economy, or they had, till Trump is now limiting them, right? It's a fact that the Chinese have been involved with so many things in the United States. You can see why companies like Nike and the NBA and LeBron James kiss their ass, are basically punk bitches for the Chinese government. But now we understand why Biden is China's punk bitch. And I'm saying this straight up because he is. If he, God forbid, he was president, we don't have national security in this country. He's basically bought off by China, and then with you remember when they were saying that Putin has over Trump? It's clearly what they have over his son. Always wondering if that dossier that his son Hunter was running around with Russian or Eastern European prostitutes, if they don't have some film of some stuff that he was involved with, okay? And then being involved with, do they have him black? Can they blackmail him for this activity? And maybe he's got payoffs to and involved with human trafficking. I mean, I may be assuming things, asserting things, but there is where there is smoke to that. But being involved with China's corrupt, being corrupted by China in such a vast way, it's unheard of. I mean, like I said, the Senate has just recently criminally referred Biden's corrupt and dangerous enterprise that not only screw the American worker and the American businessman and American women, businesswomen, but they're a serious threat to our national security. I can't say it anymore. I'm just so blown away. I mean, I wrote this up, and as I keep on reading it, it's like it just baffles me. I mean, I work in geopolitical affairs and internationally. I know a lot of things that go on. But, I mean, this is unreal. And what blows me away is why, well, I know why the media won't portray this, especially, well, I can't ever say they're news organizations because they're not journalists. But at least Fox, you should come out and talk about this. Of course, they'll say, "Oh, Fox is just crazy, right-wing crazies," but that's proven otherwise. I saw a lot more balance, by the way, with them than definitely compared to. Of course, that's been proven that they're more balanced than CNN. I mean, or MSNBC, even by Harvard. We all know that. But I'm surprised some other, like Wall Street Journal, hasn't pointed this out more and more. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. This goes beyond that stuff. One thing that crossed the line when Nixon was, did what he did, as far as Watergate and hiding that, it was pretty much clear what activity that was wrong, right? Whether you're Republican or Democrat, that was wrong. When 9/11 happened and hit our towers in New York and hit Pentagon, Americans together felt it was an attack on Americans. It didn't matter with you're Democrat or an independent or liberal or right wing or Republican or whatever. If you were in that building, you were dead. It didn't matter, right? If you believe in America, in your freedom, in your national security, in law and order, and having you love this country, even though we do have faults. Hopefully we fix our faults. We're not perfect. But to see this thing that people get paid off, not thousands, but millions of dollars, not to jeopardize the American way of living, not just to screw over the American worker, not just to screw over the American woman, American man in business, not only to screw over American manufacturing, but to seriously screw with our national security. I mean, what did they give? How do we know? I mean, this is treason. It's flat out treason. I read out of my last show, a clause out of the United States Constitution that talks about a specific area that explains it's called the Emolument Clause. It's in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. And I'm going to read it for verbatim. And no person holding any office of trust or profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present emolument, office or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Yet, we have Hunter, who is the son, receiving money from China, hookers and prostitutes from Russia, monies from Moscow, monies from the Ukraine. We have his brother receiving monies from China. We have Hunter receiving monies from China. We have his wife receiving monies and from China and having you know a communist Chinese credit card basically, so she can spend on whatever. That what isn't that an emolument? Isn't that a present? Hunter clearly broke the law just because he was considered a protectee under he was actually acting as an agent for the United States flying around. So it'd be like Ivanka is a advisor for Trump, and she flies over on Air Force One and then meets with some Arab official and then makes a business deal for the Trump organization. They don't because they can't. They're not allowed to, right? Or she receives money or gifts. I mean, not I'm talking not gifts in honor. Here's a gift in honor of you being here, blah blah blah. I'm talking financial gifts or monuments like that. I mean, the media would go nuts, right? So why the hell aren't they doing that? This is blatantly disgusting. And I think that if Chris Wallace had some balls, or any other, I mean, if Chris Wallace has some balls, he will ask on the 29th during the debate and address this. I think if there are real journalists, they would direct questions with Joe Biden and make him answer these questions. I think if the DOJ, and I respectfully respect Barr, but he needs to deal with this thing with Biden and his family is absolutely not just disgusting, it is dangerous. And if he has to bring Durham in there, I think Durham has up to his neck with all the stuff that happened with the fake with the attempted coup and with Flynn and all that stuff. He needs to have another U.S. attorney place on this and seriously go after the Biden family. This is, God forbid if Biden was president and the GOP was controlled the Congress. Hell yeah, this is impeachable. I mean, flat out impeachable. He went last, but not even 6 months. That's how bad this is. Biden is everything that our founding fathers despised and warned us about: corruption, cronyism, and selling our government to enemy states. I mean, think about it. Maybe that's why they were so afraid of Trump. If Trump was a president, we've never heard of this. But because he's president, he's literally exposing. He opened our eyes to the media. I mean, most people, I myself, I knew about the media, but a lot of my friends weren't aware how bad the media was, how they were fake. But he opened their eyes. He showed how the Democratic Party really was. He showed the Democratic Party how they're a bunch of racist, xenophobe, homophobe, anti-Semitic party. We would have never known that, probably. I mean, I knew it because I heard it from from behind scenes. I mean, when I worked for the Obama campaign, I heard crap talked about blacks and Jews and Mexicans all the time, about gays and everybody. Yeah. And I used to roll my eyes. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. That's the real Democrats. That's Biden. But this is beyond, I mean, this is unbelievable. But what did Trump do? He's exposed basically the corrupt enterprises of the globalists is what's happened. He's exposed the globalists that include the Obamas, the Clintons, the Kerrys, the Romneys, the McCains, and of course the Bidens. And of course, nobody talks about George Soros, God forbid, and they try to play like, oh, George Soros he's Jewish, and if you talk about him as anti-Semitic, please don't even go there. The guy who was corrupted with the SS and helped sell off, he said that the greatest time in his life was during the Holocaust, and he's highly involved. He's not even allowed to go to Israel. This guy he's one of those self-hating Jews, but I'm not even going to go into it. But he's a globalist pig. Bloomberg, no different. Here you see Bloomberg's paying off felons so they can vote. See how corrupt it is? Now, there's a statute. You may have heard of it. It's called the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, called RICO. I mean, it is a federal law, actually. What is RICO? It is basically an act before to go after criminal organizations. RICO, I'm reading per se, focuses on specifically on racketeering and allows the leaders of a syndicate to be tried for the crimes they ordered or others to do so, or to assist them in, or closing or perceiving loopholes that allow a person who instructed someone else to murder to be exempt from trial because they did not commit personally. What does racketeering activity mean? It means any act or threat involving murder, or an act involving kidnapping, or an act of gambling or arson, robbery, or bribery, or extortion. Didn't the Biden family commit racketeering? Hell yeah, according to statute. I mean, they literally are the epitome of racketeering. I mean, like I said, bribery, extortion. Biden, what did he do to the Ukrainian government? He's actually, Joe Biden is now under criminal investigation by the Ukraine for what he did. Didn't Joe Biden extort the Ukrainian government to stop the investigation with his son? He admitted it. Didn't the Biden family commit racketeering with their various organizations of bribery from, oh yeah, China, Russia, Ukraine? I mean, Biden got rich in politics. He's without a doubt a crook. And I repeat, Article 1, Section 9 in the Constitution, and no person holding an office of profit or trust under them without the consent of Congress. I don't remember Congress going, hey, by the way, Hunter, by the way, Sarah, by the way, James Biden, go ahead, get some money from China. Go ahead and, get some kickbacks and get some money from Putin and from the mayor of Moscow and Burisma and all that stuff. Yeah, Hunter, go see some Russian, there's some Russians, see some Russian slaves and, have sex with these human traffickers that got, sadly. The Bidens are not only corrupt, they are in fact enemies of our country, who have sold out our national security to China and even Russia. I only thank God that we have President Trump. We have Donald J. Trump as our president. We're really lucky and fortunate. And that's why it's so important that come November 3rd, we re-elect Trump. We, as Americans, cannot afford someone like Biden, who's actually can be blackmailed by Putin or any other country, or is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and their military, if Biden were ever president. The Bidens don't have and don't care about you, the American people. And they certainly obviously don't care about America. Not the American worker, not you. So come on, man. And Chris Wallace, do your damn job. Call out Biden on his activities with Hunter, with his wife Sarah, and Biden's brother James. I mean, come on, man. Get real. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching my show. I really appreciate. This has been a long. I apologize for the long show here, but I felt it was really important. So please, wake up, take the red pill, truth, think for yourselves. Again, thank you for listening. God bless you all, and God bless America, and thank you, Donald J.